How's it going, guys? Jordan McAnally from Undersoul Photography here. Today I thought I would show you how I process a RAW file. So yeah, here I have one of the center shots of my, I should have found it, oh well, one of my favorite Astro shots I've taken, a big 18 shot panorama of the Milky Way over Moke Lake. Yeah, this is just the middle shot, so I thought I'd show you what I do to start things off. As you can see, I shot at a pretty crazy white balance. I had heaps of magenta in there, so I'm going to bring that down to, go to 30, see what happens from that. I'm just going to go a little bit more blue too. Right, so first thing I do usually is chuck it a little bit of contrast, let's say 15. I'm going to go highlights all the way down and shadows all the way up to get the most dynamic range possible. I'm going to pump the whites a bit too. I'll go 27 blacks, I'll go down to 10. I don't want to go too dark on the blacks so I don't lose too much detail. We'll go vibrance to 15 and saturation to 5 just to get the color back, because raw files are generally a bit undersaturated. And as you can see, it still looks pretty dark, so let's whack the exposure up to, I can probably get a full stop. There we go. Yeah, that looks pretty good so far. Just having a look at my white balance. Let's see, have a little play. Too much blue doesn't look that great. I do really like that magenta-y look. Let's go 33 just to be cheeky. Right, we'll head over onto the tonal curve. Now I don't use the actual histogram, I just use the sliders down here. You can use point if you want, but I like parametric, whatever that means. So yeah, usually I start with the lights and I'll go up to, let's say, 20. So what I want to be careful of is I don't want to blow out this main bright center of the core there. So I'm just going to go up. Let's try 6, and then we'll zoom in on that and have a look-see. Yeah, it's getting pretty close. I'll tell you what I might do is just bump the exposure down a touch. Let's go to 80. It should be right. And then go back to fit and view. Bring the darks down a little bit just to get a little bit more contrast. 7 or 8 should be fine. And then bring the shadows up. Catch a little bit more detail in the dark areas. Let's go 15. Should be alright. And yeah, that looks pretty good already. Now I'm going to head over to detail. Now I shot this ISO 6400 for 30 seconds. So let's say, yeah, about 40 for the sharpening. You don't want to go too nuts on the sharpening on a really noisy image because it'll make it look like crap. Noise reduction, I'll go for about 30 at ISO 6400. And also I'm going to put the masking up. Now apparently this gives you sharper stars. I just find that it doesn't boost the noise too much if you... I don't think the quality is good enough so you can see the difference, but trust me, it makes a little bit of a difference. Doesn't bring out so much noise, so I kind of like it. Next we'll head over, I don't use grayscale or split toning. We'll go to lens corrections, remove chromatic aberration. Because this is a manual Samyang 14mm lens, I don't even know if there is a profile for it. They don't even have Samsung. Nah, no Samyang in there, so we won't worry about that. But I do have a bit of vignetting. This lens does vignette a bit at 14mm, so let's say about somewhere in between 30 and 40 looks pretty good. Although I can see there's a little bit of color noise in that corner now that I've done that. Oh, by the way, I should tell you, there was a bit of frost on my lens, so I've got these big crazy starburst effect off some of these stars, but I quite liked it. I could delete it out, but I reckon it looks pretty cool. And as you can see, there's a lot of it up in this top right corner. That is frost and not my lens. It's not broken, don't panic. Actually, the color noise isn't too bad up here, so I might not worry about that too much. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that only took a few minutes. Yeah, I may as well show you what we do in Photoshop. Sweet, there we go. So there's our shot in Photoshop. First thing I would do is go to my actions button here, and I've got these luminosity masks by, oh, I can't remember his name, Tony Kuiper, that's the one, there we go. So, first thing I do is, because my Astro shots come out quite bright as I shoot at ridiculously high ISOs, usually ISO 10,000, I can use the curves luminosity masks, and usually I choose a lights, but I mean you can have a play and test around, and wide mid-tones curves mask looks pretty good too, but I'll go for lights, hit play on that. And if you don't know what luminosity masks are, I suggest looking them up on YouTube. I might do a video on them at a later date. Nonetheless, we'll carry on. So I want to give it a bit of an S-curve, so I'm just going to drag up the highlights, bring down the shadows, so it gives it a nice contrast curve, gets a bit more colour in the glow here. I might add as well, this is all air glow, this crazy colour. It was a really ridiculously active night, astronomically wise. So that's where the crazy colours came from, and my crazy white balance setting. But I thought it looked pretty cool, so why not? Right, I'm going to hit the B for brush tool, so you can see the brightest part of the core there looks a touch blown out. So I'm just going to click on the mask, which I already have. Bit of a smaller brush, 33%, change to black, so I'm painting the mask out. And just paint it out a touch in that brightest area so it's not blowing out anymore. There we go. So what I try to do with all my photos is just keep as much detail and information in there as possible. So that's why I try to get the most dynamic range out of it. So yeah, next thing I'm going to do is, actually I might do another luminosity mask. So this one's going to be for levels. So I'm going to pull back a little bit of these brighter parts in the stars with the bright lights luminosity mask. So we'll play that. That gives me a levels layer here with a nice little mask. I want to zoom in to here and pull back on that a touch. Yeah, it gets me a bit more color in there, it doesn't blow it out so much. It's a bit better. So the problem with doing this is obviously because all my little stars around here are quite bright too, they're going to be dragged down a bit, so you can't really tell through filming with this software, it's not the best. What I'm going to do to combat that is I only really want to do it in the core of the Milky Way there. So I'm going to hit Command G and make a group. And then if I hit the layer mask button while I hold Option, it'll completely black out that group. So then I can get my brush, change it to white, and just paint it in where I want it. Woo! So yeah, now that's just affected the brightest part of the Milky Way. Slight difference, but I find it's worth it. I don't even know if you can see that through the software, but yeah. Ooh, alarm going off. Next thing I would do is go straight into this brilliant little piece of software, Nik Color Efex Pro 4. Click on that. And go to my favorite filter, which I reckon is probably the most powerful and the best filter in this software, Tonal Contrast. So we'll click on that, and as you can see, it makes things look pretty damn crazy, pretty cool, lots of detail out of the Milky Way there, and yeah, so I like to play with these sliders because I think that's a bit too much. It looks pretty intense. I usually go about 20, 40, and 20, leave the saturation about 20, shadows, bring them up a touch, but I don't want to push them too much as we can start getting a bit of colour noise down on the water. Here, I might bring the highlights back about 15, just so we don't blow that Milky Way core out again. And yeah, that looks pretty damn cool. And I'll layer mask that once I get into Photoshop, just so things don't look so crazy. So there we go, our filter in Photoshop. So hit the layer mask button with Option to black out the mask. And then I'm going to go G, make sure I'm at 33% and I'm on white, so I'll give it 1 click and 2 clicks. So it's about 66-ish percent of the filter there, so I quite like that. And then what I'm going to do is get my brush back, go 100%, and I'm going to paint in 100% of this filter along the Milky Way, so we make the Milky Way pop a bit more and get a bit of the detail out of the dust lanes and whatnot. Just quickly go along there. I might have a look what it looks like along the mountains as well, and I might do it down the wharf just to pull your eye in a bit more. Let's see how that looks. Go Command Z. Yeah, it does make the foreground pop a little bit more, so we'll be cheeky and keep it in there. Problem with this filter though is it creates a bit of noise, so I'm just going to double check things aren't too crazily noisy in here. Yeah, it is pretty noisy, but Dfine should be able to handle that. We'll go with it. And yeah, I'm starting to notice now there's a bit of color noise up in these top corners, but we'll fix that in a second. Actually, I probably should save this as well. Hello, desktop Photoshop suite. I always save my files as a Photoshop file just to keep all the information there. TIFFs are pretty good for saving stuff as well. We'll go back into Color Efex Pro and slap on another few filters. So next, after I've done my tonal contrast, the next thing I'm going to do is play with the exposure of the image. So a good filter to start things off is this dark and light in center one. So I'm going to change the shape to a bit more oval, and it looks pretty intense, so I'm going to drop down the border luminosity, or bring up I should say, and I don't want to brighten the center too much, so let's go about 10, something like that. So yeah, just pulls your eye into the center a little more. And I'm also going to place the center just a little lower down, maybe there, just to light up that walkway a bit more. And then I will play with that with a layer mask in Photoshop. Sweet, so again, I'm going to hit a layer mask button there, but without option this time. So I reckon it's affecting the edges of the Milky Way there a bit too much and made the top bit of the stars quite dark. And I've also lost a bit of detail in the landscape on either side, so I'm going to take that out. So, change my brush to black, let's say about, 31% will do. And I'm just going to paint out a bit here. It's pretty nice. Get back Milky Way detail here. And then I'm just going to do one quick swoop over the top just so it's not so dark. Let's see how that looks. It's pretty good, although I don't like how much it's darkening down this bottom bit of the stars as well, so we'll take it out of there. Really just want it in the corners more, just to darken them down a touch. So it looks pretty good. Take some out of the bridge as well, so it leads your eye in a bit more. And maybe a little bit of brightness in the water too. There we go. There's just a quick little adjustment. That looks pretty nice. Ditch that there. Should save that again. And back into Color Efex Pro again. Sweet, and the next filter that I usually apply is polarization. I find this gives things a nice bit of pop in the colors, makes things a little bit bluer, which sometimes can be a bad thing, but we'll see what it does. So I usually go about 77, 80, try and stay below 100 on the strength, and I always bump the shadows right up for Astro stuff, otherwise it can darken the image down quite a lot. Yeah, it's pumping a little bit of saturation in the air glow around here and in the Milky Way, which I quite like. In fact, yeah, it's pumping saturation across the whole image, but really affects these lighter bits here, which is nice. So we'll go OK. Sweet, there we go. We'll zoom in, have a wee look-see, before and after. Again, sorry, I don't know if you can actually see the difference this is making. Hopefully you can. But yeah, it's pumping a bit of saturation around there, but not too much. Just a gentle little adjustment makes things look a bit nicer. Sweet, and I'll just leave that how it is. Keep things simple. I am going to do a little exposure adjustment here. I'm just going to bring that down, hit, I think, Command Delete, no, Option Delete to make my mask black. Get my brush, make sure I'm on white, and I'm just going to darken down this corner a bit. Get rid of some of that color noise. Maybe this one too, just a touch. And I might check down the bottom here as well. Here's a little bit of color noise going on in the water because I boosted the exposure quite a bit. I'll just bring that down. I could do a hue and saturation layer and go to the magentas and then paint it in around there, but that might take a bit of time. So I won't worry about that for now. Cool, that looks pretty good. So we're almost there. I'm going to go back into Color Efex Pro again. Right, we got 2 more filters to go. So I do this on some of my Milky Way shots. Sometimes it's a bit much, but I'm going to try it for this one. I'm going to click Detail Extractor, and obviously this brings out a shitload of detail, makes things look really crazy and blown out and noisy and nasty. But what I'm going to do is just paint it across the Milky Way. And before I do that, I'm going to bump the contrast up to, 35 should be good, so it'll make things a bit closer to the exposure. I'm going to drop down detail extractor to about 20, and I find it doesn't do saturation very well, so I'm going to boost that up to 14, but I'm going to go too nuts. So yeah, that makes my Milky Way look quite nice. I might go a little bit less contrast. That should do. Let's see what we can do with that. Sweet, there we have our detail extractor layer in Photoshop. So I will put a mask on that and hold Option to black out the mask. And I've got my brush here. I reckon I'm just going to go 100%. Oh, another alarm, bloody hell. And I'm just going to paint right across all the Milky Way detail. Sometimes I do get quite meticulous with this and go in really close and go around all the little dust lanes and whatnot, and it can look pretty good, and it definitely pays off, but you can also just kind of slap it on there and it looks pretty good. So that looks pretty crazy. It's a little bit too much, so I will drop the opacity down to, let's go around the 60s, something like that. Yeah, it looks a bit better. It's not too intense, makes the Milky Way pop nicely. Cool beans. And for the last filter, back into Nik Color Efex Pro. Last but not least, again, another one of my favorite filters, Classical Soft Focus. So that's that nice glowy look about everything. So what I usually do with this filter is pretty much every time I'll go brightness to -12, that was a good guess, wasn't it? And highlights to about 60, 50, somewhere around there, so you don't blow out all your brighter parts. Looks pretty good. We'll go OK. Here we go, Classical Soft Focus in Photoshop. So it's a pretty intense filter and gives everything a really nuts glow. So for me, it's a bit too much and looks really photoshopped. I'll do the little finger quotey thing when I say that. So I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 60-ish, and then black it out with a layer mask, hit G and fill it at 33%. Usually always use 33% just to cover the whole image, and then I'm going to get my brush, go a touch bigger, and again about 33%. I'm just going to paint a bit across the Milky Way. It's just going to make the Milky Way a little bit brighter, give it a bit of glow. I might get a bit more going in the center of the galactic core, and I might get a bit in this air glow as well. Should look pretty nice. A little bit on the bridge there because the bridge is kind of bright, and maybe a little bit of the air glow reflection in the water just to be cheeky, and some snow. Yeah, we'll go across the mountains too. Why not? Just have a quick look at that. So yeah, it's a bit better. It's not so intense. A little bit more selectively painted in the brighter parts. Makes them pop a bit more. Looks quite nice. Sweet, so we're nearly done. I kind of lied. That was the last Nik Color Efex Pro filter, but now I'm going to do a sharpening layer and then some noise reduction. So we want to go Command, Option, Shift, E to create a new layer of everything. And we'll go Filter, Sharpen, Smart Sharpen. So you got to take it easy when sharpening really noisy images because you can make them look like crap. So usually I go 92% at 0.9 pixels. I only go high on the percent because usually I do 1.3 on the radius for landscape stuff in the daytime. But nighttime stuff I go 0.9. Chuck that in there and bring the opacity down. I think we'll have to. How's that look? Oh, that looks pretty nice there, although down here it's going to be really noisy, isn't it? yeah, that brings out a lot of noise down there. So let's go, yeah, 40, 45 should be alright. Yeah, that's a bit better. Gives us a little bit more sharpness. And last but not least, Nik Dfine. This software is amazing. So yeah, the software is great. You just click the button, it does its own thing, and if you look down in this bottom right corner, you can see the difference between the two. Again, I hope the software I'm recording with can actually show you what's going on there. But you can run your mouse over the image and see the difference of before and after, especially down here. It's going to make a difference. Yeah, it looks way better. Cool, so we'll hit OK, and sometimes I just leave this filter by itself and don't touch it. Other times I find it takes a bit too much noise out of the sky and you lose a bit of sharpness in the stars. Let's see how it has done. I think it's done a brilliant job actually. I don't really need to... Oh, no, actually I think it's taken a bit too much noise out of my Milky Way. So what I'm going to do, put a layer mask on it and paint it out where I don't like it. 33% sounds good to me. Make my color black and just paint out. In fact, I'm just going to paint out across the whole sky. So I've got a really big brush, just do a couple quick sweeps across there. Just to keep a bit more star detail. I think that should look pretty good. Yeah. And there you go. That is pretty much it. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Sweet, well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helps you guys out a bit. I'll be posting a few more in the near future. Please check out my Facebook page, Undersoul Photography, and hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Cheers, guys.